What's your dirty little secret that you've been keeping for a long time and you can share anonymously now? Story 1. I did it with my roommate, who's getting married in a few weeks. A few weeks ago, I arrived in a foreign country for a one-year job assignment. My company arranged housing for me, and I ended up sharing accommodations with a woman who works in a different department. We started flirting almost right away, but I soon discovered she has a boyfriend in another city. She enjoys smoking and drinking, habits that are somewhat frowned upon for women in this country, and I do too. Yes, I know smoking is a stupid and disgusting habit. It became our little secret. A few days ago, we went out for dinner and kept drinking back at our apartment. I was definitely pushing for things to get physical, though she had a friend staying over in the next room. Still, we ended up sleeping together, and I honestly have no idea if her friend knows. She strikes me as the innocent type. The next night, we went out for dinner with one of her closest friends and a few others. Everyone drank quite a bit, and things got tense when her friend confronted her. She'd seen my roommate kiss another guy and told her she should call off the wedding. That led to a big argument, and my roommate had a bit of a breakdown. Back at our place, we smoked a couple of cigarettes, and she ended up falling asleep in my bed. At some point during the night, we woke up and got intimate. Though we didn't go all the way, we just spent the rest of the night close cuddling until morning. That day, I found out from the friend who had been staying with us that my roommate is actually supposed to get married in just a few weeks. Everything for the wedding was already planned. I knew what we were doing was wrong at the time, but I didn't realize just how much it could mess up her life. Now I feel awful about it, especially because I genuinely think she's a great person. Before we slept together, I already knew she had a boyfriend. She had mentioned that she might marry him in a couple of years. She also confided in me that he had cheated on her, something she hadn't told anyone else, and that she'd kissed another guy a few weeks earlier. So while I did feel a bit guilty about what we were doing, I didn't fully grasp how serious the consequences would be for her. I think I ended up justifying it to myself by assuming she might cheat eventually anyway, and that it was somehow better it happened now rather than after marriage or kids. She's left for another city to talk things over with her best friend. And after that, she's planning to visit her parents. As far as I can tell, she's facing three options. 1. Go through with the wedding and try to bury what happened, but that seems unlikely, since I don't think she could live with the guilt. 2. Tell her fiancé the truth and hope they can work through it, though there's a real risk she'll be harshly judged if things fall apart. 3. End the engagement without revealing the real reason, keeping everything hidden but carrying the weight alone. I honestly have no idea what she's going to do, and I feel terrible for the part I played in all of this. I hate knowing that I've complicated her life so deeply, and there's nothing I can do now to fix it. Edit, I'm a white European, and she's East Asian. We are both in our 20s, and she is a few years older than me. Before we continue, do us a quick favor, smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. I've been pretending to be someone I'm not on Facebook, and it's led to the end of so many relationships. There's some backstory to this. I didn't just decide to do it on a whim. About a year and a half ago, my friend grew really suspicious of her boyfriend. She found pictures of other girls on his phone, and he claimed he'd just downloaded them off the internet for, personal use. They had been together for 4 years at that point, and she didn't want to leave based on just a gut feeling. So she created a fake Facebook profile of a really attractive girl. She used pictures from a friend of her sister's. Her sister was out of state for college. The friend actually agreed to let her use the photos and thought it was funny. She added a bunch of filler friends, and within a few days the profile looked completely legit. She added her boyfriend on Facebook using the fake account, and he accepted. Within a few days they were swapping pictures. He even started talking about leaving his girlfriend for the girl behind the profile, bragging about her sweet pie and all sorts of other stuff. Eventually, my friend dumped him. After that, I took over the profile. I didn't really have a reason to, and I wasn't dating anyone at the time, but I began flirting with guys on there, sending pictures and chatting. Since then, I've collected around 300 pictures of bare guys and a few girls too. At first, I wasn't using it to get anyone in trouble. I'd message guys I wouldn't normally talk to, flirt with them, get dong pics, and so on. It became this dirty little secret. These were guys I went to class with. I knew how big their dongs were, their weird little fantasies, all kinds of dumb stuff like that. After about 8 months of this, I noticed a lot of these guys were getting into relationships, but they kept messaging me, asking for pictures and stuff. So I started screenshotting our conversations and sending them to their girlfriends. A few days later, most of them were no longer in a relationship. At first, it felt like a twisted form of vigilante justice, like they deserved it for cheating on their girlfriends with some girl they'd never even meet. But soon, it just turned into a game. I'd add guys I knew were in relationships and bait them. About 80% of them took the bait, while the rest quickly deleted and blocked me. I have no clue how many relationships I've helped break up because of this. And honestly, I'm not even that kind of person. It just frustrated me how easily these guys would try to cheat on their girlfriends, and sometimes even their fiancées or wives. A few weeks ago, a girl sent me a message telling me she wished I had never sent her the screenshots. She said it hurt her to see her boyfriend sending pictures of his dong, completely bare pictures to me. She told me how happy she had been, and that she would rather not have known because it had ruined her life. They had been together for 7 years and were planning to get married this summer. After I messaged her, she went through his Facebook and discovered that he had been messaging about 20 other girls doing the same things he did with me. It amazed me that she didn't want to know this kind of thing. Ignorance is bliss, I guess. I closed the account after that. I told my friend I didn't need any more pictures, that I was done, and so was she. I feel awful for ruining so many relationships, but if I were in those girls' shoes, I would have wanted to know the truth. Edit. Someone asked about my relationship status during all of this, but I can't find the comment anymore. I wasn't in a relationship when it started, and honestly, I hadn't really been seeing anyone during that time. I've been dating a guy for a few months now, and he knows about the fake profile and me sending pictures to all the guys. Story 3. My 3 straight friends have all banged me. None of them know the others have. It's a messy situation, so I'm not exactly sure where to begin. Here are a few details to start. I'm part of a tight-knit group of 4 close friends. We have other acquaintances, but these 4 of us have been inseparable for a long time. We went through school and college together and hang out every other day. All my close friends know I'm gay, but no one else would guess. I'm not flamboyant at all and enjoy the same things as the other guys. Secondly, I want to mention that, although I've had a crush on one of my close friends for quite some time, I never flirted with any of them or tried to start a sexual relationship. We're all very comfortable around each other, and sometimes they jokingly flirt with me, but I always took it as just a joke. I've fallen for a straight guy before and learned my lesson, so I never took anything seriously. Edit note: I was diagnosed with BPD a while ago. Not sure how relevant that is, but it does help explain some of my impulsive decisions and promiscuity. At first, I started typing out the whole story, how it happened, what the situation was, and everything that went down. But after writing about the first part, I realized I'm terrible at keeping things short and didn't want to overwhelm you with a wall of text. So here's a summary of the situation I've caused. The first time it happened was on the night of my 19th birthday, a little over a year ago. One friend stayed over because he lived too far away to get a taxi home. I offered him my bed and went to lie on the sofa in my room, but he insisted we just hang out in my bed. Our conversation turned to physical relations. He mentioned he hadn't been with anyone in over a month. We laughed, shared some stories, and things got a bit touchy. Eventually, we ended up doing it. It all felt very surreal. I couldn't believe it was actually happening. Afterwards, we just slept. In the morning, we talked and agreed nothing would change between us, and that we wouldn't tell anyone. I was fine with it. He's straight and was just excited and curious. We've done it a few more times since then, but we both agree it's strictly for pleasure, nothing more. About 2 months later, something similar happened with another friend. We were just hanging out at his place when things escalated. We ended up trading blowies and getting touchy. Like before, we agreed not to tell anyone, and it's continued since then. We meet up for occasional banging at his house or mine whenever our families are out. Yeah, we both still live at home. The third friend has a girlfriend, so this one weighs heaviest on me. I never planned for it to happen. This all went down just a couple weeks ago, and it's actually why I'm writing this out of guilt. While all of us are close, this friend and I have had a bromance going on for a long time. We say we love each other all the time, and we're always spooning whenever we fall asleep on the sofa or bed. Nothing out of the line, we just often hang out overnight, movies and weed. He's also the one I've developed a crush on. We were just hanging out at his place after I got back from work. We played some games, joked around like usual, and talked about a guy I mentioned liking a while back. Then we talked about his girlfriend, and the conversation turned to physical relations. Pretty much the same thing happened as with the others. The talk got heavier, and we ended up messing around a bit that night. A few days later, it happened again, but this time we went further, we did it, and I stayed the night. I know he loves his girlfriend, and I don't think he's gay, but he did admit he has feelings for me, which none of my other friends have, and said he's wanted to experiment with me since college, but didn't want to sound gay. I feel really terrible for his girlfriend because he genuinely cares about her, and I like her a lot too, but at the same time, this is the person I've had a crush on forever, and he's admitted feelings for me. This is why I've decided to keep being with him, as best friends, bang buddies, and hopefully someday something more. If he ever breaks up with his girlfriend, he's confused about his sexuality, as he told me, and I don't want to push him. I'm leaving that decision up to him. While I stopped having secret relations with the first two friends, I'm still involved with the third. None of them know about what's happened between me and the others, and even though we're all still close friends, now they all send me texts and pictures of their dong when we're alone. I feel like the group's or, which I probably deserve, but now I'm really scared about what will happen if they all find out that each of them has been with me in just over a year. Writing this out has made me feel a lot better. I was tempted to just delete it and go to bed, but here it is, my dirty secret and the source of much guilt, especially because of the last friend I mentioned who has a girlfriend. Story 4. Hi. I've been feeling awful, ashamed, dirty, and weighed down with guilt all day. I don't really care if anyone reads this long post, but I just need to get it off my chest. Out of nowhere, I texted my best friend from high school, someone I've only seen once in the past year or two, and asked if he wanted to go out for drinks last night. We're both in our late 20s now. After hitting a few bars, we went back to his place. His mom was still awake, and according to my friend, she was probably on something. There was an older man with her in the living room, someone I recognized from my teenage years. He's a bit slow, and he's known around town for never missing a high school basketball game since the 60s. My friend's mom had met him back when my friend was playing for the school team. Growing up, my friend's mom always seemed a bit eccentric, but now she's apparently struggling with depression and addiction. In my drunken haze, I found myself feeling a deep sense of empathy for her. I'd always seen her as a sort of second mom. She was lying on the couch in a really low mood, and I sat on the edge of the cushion, gently running my fingers through her hair, trying to comfort her as best I could. Last night, out of nowhere, I felt this intense tension toward her, something I'd never experienced in my life before. It's hard to put into words how suddenly it came over me. Eventually, she went to her bedroom so I could sleep on the couch. While talking to my friend, I told him how much I wanted to help her, almost on the verge of tears seeing her like that. He told me it was pointless. She's always like this now, and basically urged me to give up. While we were in the car, I kept telling him how much I wanted to go back to his mom's place to talk to her some more. I felt like she really needed help, but he kept refusing, saying he didn't want to deal with her that night because she would just get on his nerves. Looking back, I wonder if he sensed that my real reason for wanting to go back was something else, something I wasn't willing to admit out loud. I can't help but feel like such a terrible person. So we were at this girl's house for maybe 20 minutes tops, and it was about 4 a.m. at this point. All I remember is a blurry scene of me loudly talking about how badly his mom looked, how I wouldn't feel comfortable sleeping at this girl's house, and finally persuaded him to drive us back over to his mom's house. I couldn't focus on anything else. When we got back and he was in the bathroom getting ready to go to bed, I met his mom in the living room. She gave me a good night hug. She was always loving like that and started talking depression again. Out of nowhere, I was slowly kissing her on the lips. When I heard the bathroom sink water running, we broke it off and she went into her room. I went into my friend's room to hang out a bit. When I finally went back into the living room to crash, she was in the hallway right outside of his room, and I bumped into her in the dark. I think she was waiting for me to come out of his room or something. She rubbed my back and my dong and told me she had made the couch up. I knew she was making excuses to stay up to mess around with me, but was also aware that my friend might have sensed something was up, so I was just thanked her casually and said goodnight, etc. While I was handling her fun bags, I got all settled on the couch, and she kissed me goodnight on the lips and went back into her room. After lying there for a few minutes, I went into her dark room and started to play with her again. She said not to because that older guy was sitting in a chair by her bed. So weird. She said he was just a friend and that he didn't sleep in the bed with her. I went halfway back to the living room, then back to her room and whispered to come out because I needed to ask her something. We stood in the hallway again. We were getting really touchy-feely with each other by then. Then she went to her bedroom, and I fell asleep on the couch. My friend was up earlier than me and made some eggs and bacon. I was briefly awoken by this, but by the time I fully woke up a few hours later, he was back asleep in his room. I got up to leave, said bye to him, and got the hell out of there. I've been feeling off all day. I still can't believe it actually happened, and how terrible I was as a friend, showing up out of nowhere and pushing him to go back to his mom's place with me, all while hiding my real intentions. I just feel so dirty. If you've read through all of this, thank you. I needed to get it out. I couldn't keep it bottled up anymore. Edit, she actually called me earlier today to thank me for talking with her last night. She said she's been really depressed and taking all kinds of pills lately, but she felt a lot better today because of our conversation. So at least there's that. Story 5. I like to spend time shagging married men. I always thought it was just a phase, that it would eventually pass on its own, but it hasn't. Since I was young, all I've heard are stories about women getting battered, cheated on, lied to, or left for another woman. And somehow the other woman always ends up with some poor husband chasing after her because she's mysterious, sexy, and obviously better than his wife. Otherwise, why else would he be pursuing her, right? They go out of their way to search for Corno, and most of the women in it don't even resemble their wives. How does that make any sense? How can a guy be soloing off to a 5'10" long-legged glamazon with a Brazilian buns, huge jugs, a perfect stomach, long hair, and flawless teeth, and then turn around and tell his petite small-jugged wife that he loves her and finds her attractive? Who the hell are these guys trying to fool? Themselves? Their wives? Who? If a guy is dating you, sometimes it's just because he's comfortable. Maybe he can't do better or wants to have his cake and eat it too. But if you're the mistress, he's actively choosing you. He's bored with his wife and wants something different. So he comes to you while his wife is left in the dark, hurting, feeling worthless, and devastated when she realizes her husband would rather be with someone else. And I want that feeling. I want to be the girl he chooses, the one he lies to his wife about meeting, the person he thinks about at night, convinced I'm way hotter than his wife. I hate having these feelings because I know it's wrong to go after someone else's husband or boyfriend. But ever since I was young, all I've seen are women getting cheated on, and honestly, I'd rather die than be the wife who finds out her husband's been sleeping with the hot secretary. I want to be that hot secretary. Story 6. I had a relationship with my daughter's ex-boyfriend, which resulted in me becoming pregnant. Later, they got back together and eventually got married. This was back in, let me think, maybe 1997. I was 38, and my daughter was 18, and she was dating Harry, who was 24. I was an alcoholic and experimented with other drugs. I wasn't a good person, let alone a mother. Not that I was abusive to my daughter or anything, but I was generally inattentive and cared more about my alcohol and drugs than about her, especially during her teenage years. I've been sober for 14 years now. I disapproved of my daughter dating Harry, but I never explained why. He was always flirting with me, which made me uncomfortable, and the age difference between them also bothered me. On top of that, he was an alcoholic and drug user, just like I was. Eventually, my daughter broke up with him because of his alcoholism. Soon after, she moved away. Not too far, but still, she no longer lived with me. Harry kept calling, asking if we wanted to grab drinks, but I kept turning him down. Then one day, he mentioned he had a stash of drugs, and I couldn't resist. He came over, and we ended up banging. He was very good looking. He reminded me a lot of that ridiculous 80s Justin Bieber photo that was on the front page today, which is actually what made me think of him. For the next few months, maybe 3 or 4, he would sometimes come over, and we'd bang and get drunk together. Any addict knows what it's like to have a partner in that kind of destructive cycle. Then I got pregnant. I knew it was his. I had did it with him without any protection, with him a few times. Stupidly, I never told him about the pregnancy. I went and terminated it and kept it a secret. After that, I stopped seeing him. It just felt too strange. I also got sober for about 4 months before relapsing. Fast forward 2 years, and my daughter contacted me to say she'd gotten back together with Harry and that he was fully sober. Honestly, I was mortified. I was terrified he was going to tell her about us and that she'd hate me forever. One day, they came over to say hi, and when my daughter left the room, Harry told me there was no reason to tell her what happened. They've now been married for 16 years and have a child together. Harry got cancer, but beat it. I stayed sober. That's basically how it all unfolded. I don't see them very often. They live in Texas, and I'm on the East Coast. But whenever we do, there's always this tension between Harry and me. It's the first thing that comes to mind for both of us. I can just feel it. Not in a sexual way, but more like, why did we have to do that? What the hell were we thinking? Kind of tension. I think about it a lot, especially when I see my grandson. I can't help but wonder that could have been my son if things had gone differently. But honestly, what a disaster that would have been if I'd kept that child. Story 7. I lied about doing drugs my whole adult life. I tell people it made me way too anxious on the come down. I'm a bartender, and I don't want people offering it to me because I've seen that slope get slippery in real time. People say it is a dumb thing to lie about. Yes, it is. I was like 19 when I started in the industry, and I'm 30 now. It's a very 19-year-old thing to lie about. But I've just stuck with it for 11 years because it seems to deter people. I've watched my husband get asked constantly if he wants a bump because people know he used to do drugs. People don't tend to ask me again after I explain to them why I don't do it. I think it sticks with them that the answer will always be no, and not just no this time. Story 8. I had just been promoted to assistant manager at my old job. A little while later, the store manager and I received a bonus due to our store exceeding its targets, but none of the other staff did. I convinced him that it was because of the other staff that we even received the bonus and that we should each take some of it to give to them. So we pooled together some of our bonuses and bought store gift cards for them to make it look like it came from the company. It was the first time any of them received anything for their hard work, and they were so happy when we gave them out. They each got little thank you cards too. Not really a dirty secret, but we did it every year from that point on. We never told them that it was from us, and I'm proud of it. Story 9. I wrote an anonymous letter to my maths teacher in year 9 when I was around 14 or 15, asking him to please shower more often and wear deodorant because his body odor was so horrific. I tried to word it as nicely as possible, and I felt ashamed for years because maybe he was struggling outside of work, but he never brushed his teeth, wore the same clothes for days on end, and stank. The sweat stains were horrific. You knew it was the same shirt because the stains got bigger throughout the week and were crusty. We would be tearing up from the smell, to the point some of the students would have to leave the room because we thought we'd be sick. If it were the first lesson of the day, we would all skip breakfast. His breath, the sweat, it was just foul. It was getting to the point where I was starting to fail maths and needed a tutor because I couldn't concentrate in lessons and was skipping class to avoid him. I can't believe the faculty never approached him about his hygiene. It was honestly horrific and the worst I have ever come across. I had double maths every 2 weeks and would dread it. My friends and I would move our desks slowly, each lesson to try and get further away from him. He did take the feedback on board because he started showering and wearing deodorant, started changing his clothes, and stopped smelling so badly. Maybe he was depressed and couldn't tell how bad it was. I honestly felt like a terrible person for writing that letter and leaving it under his door, but something had to be done because it was unbearable. Nearly 20 years later, I still feel like a horrible person. I went to boarding school and also did something similar. I spoke to a girl we shared a room with, who never washed her clothes, towels, never showered. We tried giving subtle hints by talking about a new deodorant that was amazing, etc., that it was bedding wash day. But in the end, I had a one-on-one conversation and spoke to her about hygiene. I felt awful because after the summer holidays, she didn't come back, and I thought it was because of me. Years later, she messaged me on Facebook to say that conversation changed her life. She didn't have good role models at home, and she didn't have a sense of smell, so she had no idea how bad it was. When she joined her new school, people didn't avoid her anymore, and she settled in much more quickly. I was so glad and finally let go of the guilt. It was surprising, though, the number of conversations we had to have with girls. In the end, we set up a new starter pamper night at the start of each term with the school nurse and matron, so no one felt singled out. Story 10. My prep school for an entrance exam, GE, in India had horrible living conditions. Imagine a Chinese factory. The ground floor, which was an apartment parking, was converted to classrooms, and the top floors were residences for students. You had to take written permission from parents to go out of the building and were granted a maximum of very few hours, which I don't remember right now. The food was absolutely horrible. So I went on Google and wrote a review. Holy crap, it blew up. Potential new students and their parents had read this review and asked about the inhumane living conditions. No one knew who it was until I left. My Google rating made them change the literal campus to a much better one with a larger space and better facilities because the rating never went away. Story 11. When I was a kid, my parents had to work late and couldn't pick me up from school. I would have to walk about an hour and a half to get home, as I didn't like taking the bus. Because it was so far, I would try to hang out at any of my friends' houses that would let me in while I waited for my parents. Anyways, one day I was passing by a friend's house while walking home, and I thought I'd call them to see if I could come hang out. There was no answer. I knew where they hid their spare key, and for some reason I still can't explain, I let myself in. I walked around shouting their name, and no one was home. After about 30 seconds, I realized I just broke into my friend's house. I quickly left and put the key back. I haven't told anyone. The worst part is, my friend is Russian, with a scary Russian dad with a lot of guns. I'm thankful no one was home. This was so common in the 90s when I was a kid. I remember hanging out with two friends after school at another friend's house, using their spare key, and their dad came home and asked where his kid was, and we all just shrugged, and when asked why we were in his house, not our own, we answered Foxtel, and his dad left us alone, because that answered his question, and later shouted at us from the other room to bring him a drink from the fridge. The number of times you just walk into a friend's house through the unlocked back door, without knocking, and shout "Hi, Mrs. B" into the door while making yourself at home, regardless of whether your friend was there or not. But it should be noted that no one in my town locked their back doors either. It was that kind of area where neighbors would look after neighbors. Story 12. I finally told this hilarious story a couple of months ago to my in-laws. In third grade, one of my mega-rich friends had a huge sleepover. Maybe 15-20 girls were at this sleepover. I woke up in the middle of the night, having to use the bathroom. I laid down a huge log in the downstairs toilet, and when I went to wipe, there wasn't any toilet paper. I went in the cabinets and found a decorative towel and wiped my bum with it and shoved it back in under a bunch of other toiletries in the drawers. After all the commotion, I forgot to flush the toilet. How did I know I forgot to flush? In the morning, her older teen brother goes to use the toilet and wakes us all up yelling, "Oh, who took a crap and didn't flush? Oregon wipe." Every girl jumped up to go look at this giant turd laying in the toilet, unmasked due to no toilet paper in the bowl. Everyone was so grossed out and laughing and asking who did it. I just joined along. I'm pretty sure everyone came to believe it was the weird girl of our grade. Poor thing. I still think about my friend's poor mother finding her decorative towel smeared in crap. Story 13. I heard about a girl who clogged the toilet at a sleepover, but was too embarrassed to tell anyone. But the house had a gross backyard where their dogs would crap everywhere, so she thought no one would notice if she threw the mess out the window. Using the cup for toothbrushes, she scooped up the diarrhea water and tried to tip it out the window as quietly as possible to not wake anyone up. A few dozen cups later, the toilet was empty enough to flush cleanly. She washed up the cup and crept back into her sleeping bag as if nothing had happened. The next morning, everyone gathered outside to look at the wall of the house. Below the bathroom window was a giant brown streak, a foot wide all the way down the bright white paint. Everyone denied any knowledge of it, and the girl whose house it was had an older brother who had gone out to a bar to avoid the girly sleepover. They came to the conclusion he'd gotten so drunk he got confused in his bathroom and crapped out the window. He denied it and said even if he did dump out the window, how did he do a foot-wide splatter of crap down the wall? That's more crap than a human body can fit. Again, no one found out the truth, and everyone just blamed the brother for taking a giant dump out the window. Story 14. As a kid, I was into computers and graphic design, so I hung out at the art class all the time. I learned all the DTP and Photoshop-like software from the early 90s. One of the learning exercises I gave myself was making a Wild West-style poster, wanted dead not alive, and I used a digital picture we had of the school principal. I spent a fair bit of time making it look aged, getting the fonts right, all that, saved it on the secret folder I had on the archenemy's computer, and forgot about it. Someone clearly found it because years later, after I'd left school for college, my sister, who was still there, tells me the whole school was dragged into the hall with the principal, quite angry, holding the poster demanding to know who'd printed hundreds of copies and posted them all over the school and the local neighborhood. Story 15. My employer pays my power, cell phone, water, and internet bills. They also provide my housing and a vehicle. The cell phone bill is completely legit because I have to be reachable. The housing is also, as I am stationed at a location where I have to be accessible to equipment. The truck is company issued, but they allow me to drive it whenever and wherever I want. They pay for all fuel and maintenance. The internet bill is because I have an employer-issued iPad that I run as a hotspot at home. Since it is a government job, Verizon doesn't throttle or cap data. I'm deep into terabytes now. My well pump is powered by them. My power bill is because they hooked up temporary power before I moved here and forgot to disconnect it. I've never said anything. I'm able to save a lot of money for retirement as I have no monthly bills. Story 16. When I was 13, I got home from school and realized I'd forgotten my house key, so I went to the neighbor's house to call my mom at work. Surprisingly, my dad answered the phone. He was supposed to be at his workplace, so I was confused and said, "Dad, what are you doing?" He casually replied, "Hello, son, how's it going?" "Oh, just watching some TV while your mother is doing the dishes." At this point, I realized what had happened. I dialed the wrong number and got a guy who sounded like my dad and who had a son who sounded like me. Before I could clear things up, he said, "Are you on your way home from school? Your mom just reminded me you're still grounded." Without even thinking, I responded, "Yeah, well, screw mom and screw you too. I'll be home when I'm damn good and ready." And I hung up the phone. I could only imagine how big of a trouble the other guy was in. Story 17. So at a workplace, I made a large deposit in the toilet, which initially didn't flush properly. After a few tries, it disappeared, but the water drained kind of slowly. Still, I felt it was likely gone, but slightly worried. The next dude to use the toilet clogged it. I'm certain it was because mine was trapped in the set bend, blocking the way. He went to the hardware store to get gear to unclog it, much to his embarrassment of the whole office knowing it had to be my fault. I never said a thing. "I'm very sorry, man." Story 18. I lost my V-card before 18 to a person in their 30s. The classic "wow, you're so mature for your age" shtick. I'm 37 now, and while I've tried to drop hints to a few friends, and while I suspect my mom realized after the fact, nobody in my real life knows. In my first proper, age-appropriate relationship, I didn't mention it early on, and the right time just never happened. At parties during those late-night confessional circles in the kitchen, I've never come close to blurting that one out, and I realized it's because I just don't want to. The way I see it now is, it doesn't bother me in my day-to-day life, it doesn't impact my self-worth, and I have a lot of compassion for my teenage self being so desperate to feel cool and grown up. I thought about going to the cops about it, but 1, I live in another country now. 2, any criminal charges would be pretty minimal. And 3, I don't have any old ancient MSN chat logs, as we had no cell phone back then, so the idea of digging it up only to fail to achieve anything without written proof is pretty horrible. I found the person on Facebook about a decade ago, and they were a gross old loser complaining about everything and everyone on their wall virtually every day. A person pushing 50 posting emo memes, so at least karma has made their life crappy. Story 19. I've been struggling mentally for months. It's been lie after lie, cheating, rinse and repeat. My partner wasn't willing to take me out for a couple of nights because money is tight. I accepted that only to find out a month later he gave some strange woman online a few $100s. He cashed in some vacation time for her. He was in love with her after less than 3 weeks chatting and no face-to-face. This isn't the first time he gave a woman money and got scammed. It isn't so much about the amount as it is the lying, and putting some strange woman's wants about my desire to get away for a couple of days. I spent over 20 years loving him and was completely devoted to my partner. No one would even suspect him of doing this because he comes off as such a clean-cut, clean-living person. Generally, I am a cheerful person who smiles at people and loves to make others smile. People don't know because I keep my crying and having breakdowns at home, drinking and getting high a lot. I have been going out a lot more just to be around people because I don't want to be alone sometimes. My heart aches. I tried to rebuild with him and trust him again, but he goes back to the same behaviors. I feel disgusted at myself for loving him so long, despite this. He says he is no longer in love with me. I can barely gather up enough strength to work and do what needs to be done day to day. Story 20. At my previous employer in education, they had searched for a new VP of instruction. Each candidate had to give a presentation about themselves, and all the employees were allowed to go and view the interview. Sent a questionnaire asking employees for feedback on the different candidates. One of the candidates had been a principal or superintendent in their previous role. I can't remember which. I'm a huge Simpsons fan, so I made up a response referencing the iconic steamed ham segment. I talked about how we had an unforgettable luncheon and discussed the vernacular of upstate New York while enjoying some steamed ham. We also had a rare sighting of the Northern Lights, just all sorts of little references like that. I figured out that the survey allowed you to submit your response multiple times since there was no authentication, and it was supposed to be anonymous, so they just emailed the link and it didn't make you sign in or anything. I set up a little bot on my home computer using a VPN, of course, to complete the survey again and again every few minutes. They sent it out on a Friday, so I let it run for a while and then forgot to turn it off. It ran just about the entire weekend and flooded them with hundreds of identical responses. Unbeknownst to me, they had terminated an instructor that same day. The president, HR, and a few other people all had a meeting on Monday morning about all the submissions. Someone had done some Googling and figured out what the references were. So they were in the meeting and watched the segment a few times together. Anyone familiar with the bit knows that Principal Skinner's house catches on fire. They thought the instructor had completely lost his crap and was up at all hours, and it was some sort of thinly veiled threat from the terminated employee that he was going to burn down the school. There were no repercussions for the terminated employee. They didn't pursue any sort of legal action or anything, since they couldn't prove it was him or that it was an actual threat, thankfully. I thought it was hysterically funny that they were all in a meeting together, watching a Simpsons clip over and over and picking it apart to get to that weird conclusion. I also know if they found out it was me, I probably would have gotten in a lot of trouble. Story 21. Years ago, when I was first diagnosed with anemia, they had me take a ton of iron supplements. Anyone who takes them knows they can constipate you terribly. The doctor never suggested Metamucil, Miralax, or Collis to help. I was at work and complained about it jokingly to a coworker that morning. Well, an hour later, a miracle happened, and I finally pooped after about 10 days. The poop was so large it got stuck in one of the office's commercial toilets, as they didn't have a very strong flush. It was intentional as part of a green building. I couldn't leave it in there as I would be made, given I'd already made the mistake of sharing my plight earlier. It would be too easy to connect the dots, so I had to MacGyver my way out. I grabbed a couple of latex gloves from the maintenance closet and threw the entire 2-foot log into a plastic bag, tied it up, and threw it at the bottom of the garbage in the bathroom with a bunch of paper towels above it. Unfortunately, about 2 hours later, when I walked into the bathroom, I could smell it. There was no way you couldn't smell poop coming from the garbage. So I grabbed the bag and went outside and dumped it into the closest public garbage, which happened to be outside a children's museum. Story 22. The very first company I worked for had 2 offices. One was the main one I was based out of, along with 90% of the other employees, and the other was downtown in a shared building that hardly anyone else from our company used. After being with them for only a month, I got put on a project based out of the downtown office, so I had to start going there before anyone really got to know me or was used to seeing me at the main office, and I worked there for several months. However, after about 7-8 months, we had completed the project. I was supposed to go back to the main office, but I got put on a new project that was based out of state, and I was just going to be working with them remotely, via conference calls and whatnot. So I decided to try just staying home and was going to feign ignorance if I got called out. Occasionally, someone from the main office would check in on me to see how the project was going, and I'd tell them I was still using the downtown office. I'd also occasionally have to communicate with this one guy from the downtown office, and I'd tell him I was working at the main office again, so both thought I was at the opposite office. I managed to keep this up and work remotely from my apartment. Despite the company having a work in the office 5 days a week policy for almost 2.5 years, they never did figure it out. But eventually I got a better offer and went to a new company. Story 23. At my old job, I was told I might be made redundant 2 weeks before my month-long vacation, and the boss told me the news with a big crap-eating grin, too. I told them not to inform me until I got back. Towards the end of my trip, I visited a friend in NYC. He asked if I wanted to join him on his band's 3-week tour through the US. I looked to get my travel insurance extended. I needed an alibi why I wasn't coming back for a few more weeks, but changing my plane ticket was too expensive. He dropped me off at the airport, and it's the day after a very busy holiday, so the airport is packed and extremely busy. I try to check in, but I'm informed that they're overbooked. I hint to the staff if I could be upgraded to business class, but it's a no-go. They're extremely overbooked. They tell me to go and wait around the corner. I sit down and think about the situation and realize I need to exploit it. I go back to the counter, tell them I want to go on this rock tour, and I want my ticket changed to the date of my choosing for free. I'll be solving their problem, and they'll be solving my problem. They tell me to go wait around the corner while they share the offer with their supervisor. Before I even sit down, they say we have a deal, tell me that the service desk is waiting for me. I'm super pumped, run to the service desk, sort out my new ticket, call my friend to say that I can come on the tour, and that he needs to come and pick me up. But what do I tell my boss? Well, before I got on the plane, I got extreme pains on my right-hand side, and I started pissing blood. We ended up going from NYC to Orlando into Mississippi, up to Chicago and back to NYC, spread over 3 weeks. It was sick. I just had to talk to photographers to make sure not to photograph me. I gained a few kilograms from all the great food, driving, beer, and very little exercise. When I got home, people were asking about the kidney stones. I said it wasn't very nice. I undersold the whole experience. It wasn't until I met someone who had them that I understood how painful it is. Anyway, I had an official doctor's note saying I had kidney stones, and I even signed myself in at the hospital. Yeah, that is the best lie I've ever told. I never went so far as to make an insurance claim for it. Didn't want to take it too far. I run an adult website, which is already something I keep secret. Given the nature of user-generated content, it's not uncommon for people to upload illegal material or images of others without consent. One day, while moderating, I found a user posting explicit photos of someone I've known since childhood and still see regularly. The photos were years old. I knew just deleting them wouldn't stop their spread. At first, I considered telling her directly, but since I've helped her with tech stuff in the past, I was afraid she might wrongly suspect I was involved. So I started chatting with the uploader, pretending to be interested in gathering clues about the girl. I recognized the house in the photos and asked questions to confirm who it was. Eventually, I was certain it was someone she had dated, whom I knew. Without going into details, the hard drive that stored pics vanished, and after monitoring him for a while, the photos never resurfaced. She doesn't know anything. Same goes for the guy. Story 25. When I was in my early 20s, there was a period when I was depressed, broke, out of a job, and spent a lot of time at the local library in a town where I had moved to study. I spent hours in the library at the time, every day, as they had magazines, computers, and free internet. There was this one librarian, an old hag, who observed me every day and complained that I spent so much time at the computers there, even if there were multiple PCs free and unoccupied, and I always left after the time limits they set ran out. There was this toilet that all the staff and customers used, so out of spite, instead of using the toilet they had, I ended up dumping in the trash can next to the toilet multiple times a week for a month. After a while, they turned the free toilet to pay to use for everyone, because someone's been taking a dump in the trash can. Now, 20 plus years later, I can't believe what I did and can't understand why. I bet the toilet is still pay to use there. Story 26. I was a service technician at a small family-owned office machine company. The secretary dispatcher was a brown-nosing backstabber. She could be insufferable to all the techs. I was also the network admin for our LAN. Sometimes, before leaving on a service call, I'd log into the router and set a timer on her reserved IP address to be blocked for an hour. Then I'd leave. Inevitably, she'd call me and complain that her internet wasn't working, but everyone else's was. I'd have her reboot. She'd call back, still not working. I'd reply, okay, I'm on my way back. I'd arrive, go to her workstation, and test her internet. Since it had been more than an hour, it was miraculously working now. With a shocked expression on her face, she'd say, how could that be? I'd reply calmly, I don't know. Story 27. I was friends with my boss at a job. We used to hang out a lot, and I knew a lot of his secrets. He was married and had extramarital affairs. His wife was a very nice person, and she was way out of his league. I left the job and ended that friendship because he was a toxic friend. He didn't want me to leave while knowing that the offer I was getting from another company was way better for my future. So our friendship ended when I changed my job. One day, out of nowhere, his wife called me and asked me about him. She said, I have heard some things about him, and I don't know if I still want to stay married to this guy. I thought of lying to save his toxic A for a second, but then I thought, what if that innocent and capable girl ruins her life just because I was trying to be a good friend? I told her she deserves much better. Without telling her any details, I did tell her about his affairs. She ended up filing for divorce the very next day. He doesn't know that I told her, and we still talk. I don't regret doing it. Story 28. Many years ago, I pretended to be disabled because I was embarrassed that my shoe broke, and I think I deserved the crap. I was in secondary school, first year. I didn't come from a rich family. We could barely afford food. My dad came back on the scene and helped a little for a year until he buggered off again. During that time, I got some new school shoes. I had had them for about a year at the point of failure. It was morning break. I was outside, and when I came back in, I tripped on the door frame. The sole of my left shoe separated almost entirely. It was flapping around when I walked. I tried to ask my teacher if they had a way to fix it, and then they sent me to the front desk for elastic bands. They gave me a few and said I should go home because the other kids would pick on me. I jumped and flapped at the opportunity. All was well while walking to the bus stop. I got on the bus and tripped to kick the step leading up to the back seats of the single-decker bus. All the elastic bands snapped. I had a sinking feeling. As my stop drew closer, I was computing all the things I could do to hide it. I still don't know why I chose lame foot syndrome. The bus terminated 5 stops early too. Anyone who was on the bus saw me get on able-bodied and witnessed a sudden onset of disability take hold. I got off deciding to drag my foot behind me, heel facing my direction, toes facing behind me, so the sole wouldn't flap when I walked. It was the longest walk of my life. I couldn't give you any justification or reasoning behind it. It's like I left my body to save my soul from the embarrassing soul. Terrible. Story 29. One time, I thought it would be hilarious to print Nicolas Cage's face onto Jesus candles and Photoshop his face into my ex's family photos. I even put his face in pictures of the president and framed them all around her house, acting like it was no big deal. Turns out, her dad is a heavy drinker and didn't find it funny at all. They immediately suspected one of their cousins, Robert, and pretty much disowned him over it. Ever since, everyone would tease her dad, saying Nicolas Cage was his favorite movie star, which would make him lose it, yelling, "That's not true. Screw Nicolas Cage, I don't like him." What I thought would be a light-hearted prank ended up causing lasting drama for her family. I was ready to admit it was me, but my ex told me they believed Robert had broken in, since they don't lock their doors, put the photos up and left. Now that we're no longer together, I kind of want to prank call her dad and tell him I have secret photos of him giving Nicolas Cage a blowy. 2 girls were bullying my best friend at school. To get back at them, I started a rumor that they were really close in a way that made other students uncomfortable. One day, the 3 of us were on the school bus after our after-school club heading to rural areas. My best friend was upset, and I said, "OMG, those 2 are never apart. I bet they do all kinds of things together." not meaning anything harmful or judgmental about their relationship. Then, one popular boy on the bus asked what I said, so I repeated the rumor. The next day, everyone at school was talking about it. Some students were even called into meetings with the school administration and questioned about the rumor. Those girls were really upset. I was never suspected because, besides this, I've always been known as a kind person. Honestly, I don't feel bad because they made my friend's life miserable just because of how she looked. Story 30. I technically shouldn't have been allowed to graduate from high school. I was in a self-paced class that was required for graduation, and I wasn't doing a great job managing my time in it. It was my last day of school, my senior year, and I went in to finish the several chapters and dozens of unit tests I had skipped over, and my binder full of my work was gone, none of which I had turned in, even for the work I did do. I told the teacher that someone stole my binder, and she asked if I had finished the work, and I lied and said yes, so she gave me the pass. It's been over 20 years and I still think about it and feel bad about lying. I wasn't a great student in high school, but when I eventually went to college, I was much better and maintained close to a 4.0. I think my lowest GPA was a 3.4 or 5, and never did anything like that again. I think that mostly was just because I grew up more. Story 31. One afternoon back in college, something I ate didn't agree with my stomach. I used the communal dorm bathroom and blew the stall up. I did my business and felt much better, but when I went to flush the toilet, it wouldn't flush. I didn't clog anything up, etc. The toilet legit wasn't working, and it was one of those toilets without a tank, so there was nothing I could do. So I made sure no one else was in the bathroom and then pieced out to my room, leaving the grisly crime scene behind. A few minutes later, I heard multiple voices in the hallway. I went out into the hallway and saw a group of other dorm residents gathered around the bathroom, some laughing, some looking disgusted, and some verbally expressing their dismay and astonishment. I casually walked up with a curious expression and asked the crowd what was going on. They informed me of the grossness that someone left in one of the toilets. I peeked in to keep up the subterfuge and acted grossed out AF. I'm telling you, I was a master thespian that day. Story 32. Fast forward a bit, and my ex was always swiping on Tinder and going on dates. I got very resentful, and I ended up making a catfish profile using someone else's photos and a fake name. We matched and agreed to go out for dinner. Come dinner time, I stood him up with my fake account. That warmth and validation made me feel so satisfied. It was what I craved. Looking back now, I feel a bit guilty, but mostly extremely pathetic for being in that low of a place to pull a stunt like that. Thankfully, I eventually came to my senses after he cheated a second time, and I'm in a much better place now. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.